Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's Lido Poolside community call. My name is Sven. I'm a contributor to the node operator mechanisms team at the Lido Labs Foundation, and I'll be hosting this month's call. It's the June edition of the call, and it's dedicated to protocol decentralization, some security updates. So today we'll be sharing upcoming changes in Lido Core. I would say the biggest in the past few years. We always say that, but I mean, they do keep getting bigger. And we're going to discover how these impact the protocol and the Ethereum ecosystem. We're also pleased to welcome two guests today. So one is discussing client performance measurements and resource usage on production hardware. It's quite interesting. And another presenting the Web3 SOC assessment, which includes Lido's certification results. But before I introduce our first speakers, I should start with some housekeeping. First of all, I don't know where you're watching this. You could be watching on Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, but you can feel free to post your comments wherever, and we'll see them come in live. So we can ask any questions. We can forward them to the speakers for you, and we'll pick those up after each section. We'll try to limit it to 3 in total. And as usual, we'll try to do our best to keep the call under 1 hour and wrap it up before 3 p.m. UTC time. But without further ado, let's start with our first topic. With the introduction of ST Vaults and Lido V3, the traditional Lido staking flow, so with ETH deposited through Lido is allocated through modules, is now known as Lido Core. So Alexandra Gusakova, also known as Sasha, Lido Core product lead, and Will Shannon, head of node operator mechanisms at Lido Labs, aka my team lead. They're going to both walk us through the changes that should keep Lido Core competitive, sustainable, and aligned with Ethereum's decentralization goals. So Sasha, if you're ready, the floor is yours, please.
Cool, perfect. Hey everyone, that was quite an introduction from Sven. I don't even know what to say after that. But yeah, hey everyone. So today I want to walk you through the recent updates on the Lido Core side. So it is the end of June 2026, and let's see what we have as of today and what is coming next. One sec. Yes, so cool. We will be looking at Lido Core from a perspective of staking modules. As most of you, I hope, know that there are 3 active modules on mainnet in Lido Core: the curated module, the community staking module, and the simple DVT module. We will cover each of them one by one, and let's start with the curated module. So curated module is getting its biggest ever. As Sven said, it's getting bigger and bigger every time, but I can say that it's the biggest upgrade ever for the curated module. So the majority of the Lido validator set will be transitioning to the new version of the module in a matter of like months. So now I want to look together with you at the main aspects of this module just to better understand what it's going to be. So, of course, we first start with the security aspect. And here I have probably 3 main points that I want to outline in terms of what is going to be baked in security for this module. So the first one is the operator bond. And this is, I think, a very material change from the current version of the curated module, where the main alignment mechanism between the protocol and the node operators is the reputation of node operators, and that's what they put at stake. In the second iteration of the curated module, there will be a pretty strict mechanism of bonding, which is a security collateral that node operators will put basically to cover operational risks as like slashings, as the rerouting of the execution layer rewards, or the cases of a significant downtime for node operators. Now, if we have a mechanism of bond that is meant to cover possible losses, there should be a mechanism of penalties, which is basically something that will allow this bond to be used for some of the bad cases that can happen on node operator side. And the third component, which is the traditional and like must have for Lido protocol, is that each upgrade, doesn't matter whether it's big or not, is undergoing through 2 independent audits from the smart contract security auditors. In our case, for the modules released, it's StateMind and Certora, who are working on reviewing our code. I think that the report on this one should be published in a month, or maybe even less than a month, I believe. And here, just stay tuned to see what they discovered on that site. And from the security, we are going to go straight to the node operators, as they are the main users of the module. Here I will be talking about the node operator types, which is the mechanism that aims to help protocol to recognize that not all operators are the same. Not all of them contribute in the same way to the protocol. Not all of them have the same costs on running infrastructure, etc. So the new module will recognize those node operator types. There will be 6 of them, and even 7, even though you see 5 on the screen. Here I just want to highlight, I guess, the 3 main ones I want to draw your attention to. The first one is public good operator, also known as client teams, with the idea that Lido has historically supported the client teams and keeps supporting the client teams as a part of the node operator set, basically allowing them to participate in the curated set for the Lido protocol, and supporting them with some additional rewards that they can receive as node operators. Next type is the decentralization operator type, which is probably my favorite, with the main idea that not all of the operators have the same infrastructure, the same setup, and contribute in the same way to the decentralization aspect of Ethereum. And the idea here for this type is also for protocol to recognize those operators who contribute to the client diversity, geographical diversity, and infrastructure diversity the most. And the third one I wanted to mention here is extra effort operator. This is more about the alignment between the operator and the Lido protocol. And the 2 main things that are being recognized within this type is the amount of stake that this operator brings to the protocol, and the LDO holdings, with LDO being the governance token for the Lido DAO. So you can check more details in the framework, which is a pretty heavy one, yet I hope understandable. And we are going to move to the next component, which is governance. So here, the main governance aspect of the module stays largely the same, with the idea that the module is curated. It means that it's not permissionless. It means that not everybody can just go and join. The main component stays the same, in a sense that the onboarding for the node operators will still be up to the DAO to decide who is joining the set. But to simplify the day-to-day operations around governance, there is a specialized body that was established specifically for this purpose, which is the curated module committee, that consists of some Lido Core contributors and also the LNOSG members, with LNOSG being the previous governance entity that was overseeing the module. So for the CMC, the main set of responsibilities is to basically report and apply penalties for the node operators, report the amount of slashing penalties, assign the node operator types according to the framework that we just saw, and basically run the initial assessment for the onboarding so that the DAO members can make an informed decision about the onboarding itself. I think that would be enough for the governance, and we are moving to the parameters. Again, the whole analysis behind those numbers, it deserves a separate 20 minutes call, I guess. But to put it short, I just want to highlight the main differences in terms of types, and it will help to better understand what these types are for. So, for example, we have professional node operator, which is a type that serves as a trial stage for newcomers to the curated module. And we see that the fee for node operators is lower here compared to all the rest, while those three types that I outlined in one of previous slides have the higher fee than just the default type, which is a professional trusted operator. Same goes in terms of the differences for the bond, as bond serves as a security guarantee. For the newcomers, this requirement will be higher. For the node operator who have established experience within the Lido protocol, this requirement will be lower. I think those are the main ones that I wanted to highlight here. Again, just leaving a QR code here in case you want to dig deep into details and see how we came up with these particular numbers. And we are moving forward to where we are now. Actually, we are right now in the process of testnet. The module is deployed on testnet. All of the current CMV1 operators have successfully onboarded to the CMV2, created their node operators, uploaded their keys, and now are in different stages of the process of consolidating their stake. Just to understand better what this transition is looking like, basically all of the stake that currently sits in CMV1 should be migrated to CMV2, which is a completely different and separate module. So it means that the migration is happening through the consolidation flow, where node operators upload their keys with OXO2 credentials. Then they receive seed deposit on those keys, and after that, the node operators themselves, they initiate the migration of their stake from CMV1 to CMV2. This is a pretty big process. What we saw on testnet that it's going fine. We don't really have a main issues on our way, and we're pretty confident that we are ready to proceed with the mainnet, which is going to be our next slide. So the main point here is that we expect mainnet release to happen in late July. Of course, it's a matter of when we receive the final audits and what this final audits, what they're going to look like. But largely, we are aiming to late July with the three different periods of the migration. Though, for some reason, we call them period 1, 1.5, and 2, but there are three periods. So in the first period, node operators will create their node operators entity, and they will start uploading their keys. They will receive their seed deposits, but during this process, the top-up deposits is the deposit that will bring the balance of the node operator from 32 is to 2048. They will be disabled. It means that during period 1, all the stake that is flowing to the protocol will be distributed between the three other modules that we have as of now: the curated module V1, simple DVT, and CSM. In the period 1.2, we will just enable the top-ups for CMV2. It will mean that both CMV1 and CMV2 will be ready to receive organic deposits from the protocol, and we will basically close the migration with putting the stake share limit for the old module to 0. That will mean that it will be the main module that will serve the withdrawals from the protocol, and it will just naturally become empty, the old module, and all the stake will be migrated to CMV2 at this point. And this is, I guess, a rough plan for the mainnet, but basically the main idea is that we are targeting late July for the module to be released on mainnet. That is largely it for the curated module, and now really quick about CSM. So we have joint release of the curated module v2 and CSM v3. CSM did a great job in terms of sharing its code base with its big brother CMv2. So CMv2 is going to be using the same code base that CSM uses. So that's why it's going to be a joint release of these two modules. But from a product perspective, CSM also has something to say, because there are some features that you might be curious about. The first one is the introduction of a new node operator type, which is called identified DVT cluster. Some of you might know that CSM as of now has two main node operator types. The first one is the default one, the permissionless one, and the second one is identified community staker. And I remember when we were proposing this type to the DAO, we were thinking, wow, this is like the best of the best. We couldn't imagine that there might be even better conditions that DAO can have in the permissionless module. But then basically there was an idea, what if there going to be a type that is not just designed to a single ICS, identified community staker, but for a group of independent identified community stakers that will be operating under DVT. And basically the combination of those two, the clusters being combined of 4 ICS participants plus DVT on top of that, allows the protocol to lower even the super cool ICS requirements in terms of bond and provide even more capital efficiency for those participants. Just a couple of days ago, we closed the first round of the assessment. We received 16 new participants that applied and successfully passed the verification for this type. And this type will be live on mainnet again late July, because it's going to be the same release as CMv2. So here I have this little QR code for those who know about ICS and don't have it yet. You guys know what to do with this QR code. Just go and scan it. For those who don't know, I also recommend you going and scanning it and figuring out why do you need it after that. But I'm pretty sure that you won't regret this. Moving forward, the two other features that we're going to have in CSM is the reward splitter, which is basically a functionality that will allow DVT clusters to operate more seamlessly within the CSM module, basically allowing to natively set up the reward splitter between multiple recipients. And the second very nice feature is the easy track that will allow the DAO to have a lightweighted process of increasing the stake share limit for the module. So as of now, any increase of the stake share limit for the module requires a full DAO vote. Now the idea is that this limit will be managed by the easy track, which is the optimistic governance process. There is one more thing about CSM that I want to mention, but I will leave it up to the end. And for now, I think it's time to switch to the next module, which is simple DVT module, and I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage William Shannon to give us update about this one.
Hey everyone, so I'm going to touch quickly on the regular cluster wind down within the simple DVT module. And so the main idea here basically is that node operators that are participating in the 72 regular clusters within simple DVT, those clusters will be exiting, and there's a new path that's available to those participants via this identified DVT cluster within CSM. And so the idea here is that this is a much more scalable way for DVT to scale within Lido for home and community stakers. Within the simple DVT module, in general, I'd say it's been a pretty huge success. However, one of the issues that has quite clearly appeared within the last year, especially as ETH to USD prices are weaker, as per validator rewards rates have decreased, as the total amount of ETH stake has increased, is that certain home and community stakers started to leave clusters. These clusters have 7 people within them, and one person leaving doesn't mean that the cluster stops operating, but it does increase the risks. And in that case, we need to do a reshare ceremony or exit the cluster and basically reform it with new people. And this is a pretty huge operational burden, both on the Lido contributors that help facilitate this curated module, as well as all the node operators in these clusters that had to go through periods of exiting validators or pretty intensive like reshare operations. So I'm very, very excited about the path within CSM. I think it will allow for DBT clusters to self-coordinate in a way that allows them to earn additional rewards in many cases, but also decrease the operational burden. So one of the really cool things as well is that the DAO has, via the snapshot vote that passed earlier this week, basically signaled that there will be a token of appreciation for operators that participated within SimpleDBT via a new grant framework. And so this grant framework has a maximum amount of up to 65 ETH. That comes from the existing egg request and egg that was approved a few months ago. And so there's no additional outlay required. Specifically for the grant framework. So node operators that are not currently in a supercluster and that also coordinate with contributors and their fellow cluster mates to follow the wind down procedures will be eligible to receive a grant. That initial grant will be for 0.175 STE, and the distribution for that will be expected to happen in August. In addition to that, for all of the home and community stakers that have participated within SimpleDBT, they'll be receiving the ICS type within the community staking module as well, which will introduce a new way for them to participate in addition to the permissionless path. And so what's really cool now is that node operators that are in SimpleDBT will basically have 3 options to continue participating as part of the protocol via CSM. The first will just be the default permissionless path that anyone can utilize. The second will be via ICS, and the third will be via the IDVTC node operator type. And so we will be, as contributors, helping to do some facilitation of cluster matching for people within SimpleDBT that want to continue running DBT as part of Lido. But the nice thing here is that there's also paths for folks to just run solo nodes as well. For those that decide to continue running validators via Lido in CSM, and if they do so for 3 continuous months, they will receive an additional grant of 0.175 STE towards the end of this year. In terms of the timeline, so the SSV clusters, there's SSV clusters and OBL clusters within SimpleDBT. The SSV clusters have already exited their validators. That happened over the last couple of days after the snapshot vote passed. This happened a few days earlier than OBL due to a constraint where the runway in those clusters was denominated in SSV, which is an older version of the SSV protocol. They did not migrate to the ETH-denominated payments, and so their runway was going to run out before the July 1st date. Those clusters have now all successfully exited, and then we expect the OBL clusters to start the exiting process next week, and likely that will be wrapped up by the end of next week as well. When it comes to the super clusters, they'll continue to operate as normally until the original wind down date, unless there's a proposal that's made to either wind them down earlier for some reason, especially if economics don't sort of improve, or for the potential for them to migrate to a different module. But this will very, very much depend on what market conditions sort of look like over the next 6 to 12 months. Where I want to kind of leave off here is, first off, a huge thank you to all of the SimpleDBT participants. SimpleDBT was at one point the largest and really initial battle testing of DBT on mainnet. I still believe that this is probably one of the most decentralized, if not the most decentralized set of validators running on Ethereum, utilizing distributed key generation. All of these clusters have combinations of professionals and home stakers, something that's really not seen anywhere else on the protocol in general for node operators. They're running different client types, they're running in different geos. And so I think that they did a massive service for the decentralization of Ethereum and its validator set, as well as the decentralization of Lido. But I think the really cool thing here is that CSM offers really an incredible opportunity to keep that going forward. There's a reason that the community staking module is now the largest permissionless protocol of home stakers. It's the largest pool of permissionless stake on Ethereum outside of just running like a node and a validator for Ethereum itself. There is great node operator economics. The user experience to get started in CSM is really, really great. And as I mentioned, we're going to be helping folks that want to match with other node operators to continue running DBT as part of the protocol in the coming weeks. So whether you participate as ICS, whether you participate as one of these DBT clusters in CSM, or just via the permissionless path, I think there's a lot of great opportunity to continue supporting the decentralization of both Lido and the underlying Ethereum validator set. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Sasha.
Cool. Thank you, Will. I think we have just one, maybe two slides left before we pass it over to the next speaker. And there was one more thing that I postponed till the end of the presentation. And here I want to give probably a first official introduction of a new module that is also going to be permissionless and that is going to use OXO2 withdrawal credential. We expect to see the proposal up on forum in a days or in just coming hours about this one. So the main idea is that CSMv3 release will also bring a technical support of OXO2 validators to the permissionless module. That gives the protocol an opportunity to introduce a new module that will be, on the one hand, permissionless, on the other hand, operate with the big keys. This sounds exciting just because of the idea of the OXO2 validators usage. But on top of that, this module, I think, will introduce one of the most capital efficient permissionless options, not just within the Lido protocol, but in the whole ecosystem. And together with that, it will provide a really good economics for the DAO itself. The only caveat here that I want to mention is that this module is not something that will be released together with CMV2 and CSMV3 in the end of July. This will require a little bit more time just so that protocol can properly process the migration of CMV2. So the timeline is not defined yet, but I think we will see the official proposal on the research forum again in coming days or hours on that. And with that, we covered pretty much everything about Lido Core. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. Thanks a lot for that amazing presentation. Of course, Will as well. So a quick reminder to our viewers, we didn't get any questions here, but you can send all your questions to the platform where you're watching. So that can be on Twitter or LinkedIn, on YouTube. We'd gladly have them. So thank you both one more time, guys. And let's move to the next part of our agenda, which is Stefan Kobrc, founder at StereumLabs. So what does Ethereum client diversity actually cost in terms of performance and resources? Stefan is going to present the measured data from production hardware and discuss what it means for operators preparing for example, the curated module v2 or some other scaled up setting that you might be preparing to run. So Stefan, if you are ready to take the floor, take it away, please.
Hi, thanks. I'm Stefan. I'm the founder of RockLogic, a curated set node operator in the Lido set, and I'm also founded StereumLabs last year. Especially, I'm talking today about client diversity and about StereumLabs. So we can all agree on. Oh, sorry. Now it works. We can all agree on that we need client diversity for security reasons. It is imperative that we have multiple clients running on mainnet. So if one client has a bug, fails for some reason, we can still rely on other implementations of the same specs. We have right now 6 execution clients and 6 consensus clients ready to be used and production ready. And that's a very healthy selection, to be honest. And everybody dreads the switch, of course, because it could mean that you are missing out on rewards. The true cost actually is in the operational side. That means how the disk, how much disk requirements do you have in terms of IOPS, in terms of disk space. What is the sync status the sync time like? I'm sorry. And how do you need actually to change the dashboards that you actually can read the client metrics properly? What we heard now from operators when we talk with them, then they decide on limited information so far. And We want to change that in a way that it turns from a gut feeling to a more data-driven approach. So how we measure it is pretty straightforward. We have the same hardware for everybody, for every client combination, the same budget. If we don't have it, for example, for eFrex, we use a little bit more memory. We line this out transparently. And we also run only on mainnet, so you can really compare the footprint to your own node, and you can also compare GCP, how it is to run clients on GCP in comparison to bare metal. Our clients usually run on bare metal in Vienna, Austria. And we try this. We do this because clouds usually have neighbor noises, and we try to eliminate as much as possible. Everything should be reproducible that you can find on StereumLabs. Especially, we outline what configuration and what specs we use for each client combination. Right now, we run around 44 active configurations. That means 44 nodes. So far, we had close to 500 full nodes that we ran and measured. This number is slightly decreased because we started only recently with actually pinning up the profiles with every client version and every client combination, so you can find them very easily on the website. So it's probably, if you don't need to find them on the website, it's probably between 1,000 and 2,000 hosts that we already measured. As I said, we run every client combination. That means 6 times 6 is 36 client combinations so far, plus 1 because Kaplan already runs with Aragon, which is a very interesting client decision. And we provide also debug logs for our users, and of course metrics. So now let's talk a little bit about penalties or the fear of them, because if you look at the Lido curated set right now, it's only 1% point that is the difference between the worst operator and the best operator. This is not measured by us. This comes from the Lido measurement tool that they provide, and this basically means even if you switch clients, you can still participate in the best curated set out there. How they mix the clients is of course very important, because the mix in the Lido curated set is very, very diverse, and also the clients are therefore diverse. So the next finding is about how the clients actually differ between each other, and we found out that the execution layer disk footprint with the leanest client is 3 times smaller than the one from the heaviest execution client so far. You can find, of course, more on this on our blog. So if you go to our website and then to the blog, you can easily read about that. We also publish from time to time, I guess right now it's every week, some stuff about our findings. And another thing that we found out is, of course, which was already very well known, that the fresh sync, the initial sync, differs also very greatly. Even if you use the same hardware, top spec hardware, the clients differ in fresh sync from 1.5 hours to over 8 days or even more. So yeah, that's a very interesting finding that we had, but actually we just confirmed what others already told us. So about the last finding that I want to discuss today, that the metrics or your dashboards might not work on this if you have already a client, a dashboard for your Prism client, then it might not work on Prism, on Lodestar, for example. The reason is that they have the same metrics, but they measure different things. So both are correct in the sense of what they want to tell us, but you still need to be cautious about what you actually get shown to from the client. We specifically use AI for this to figure stuff like this out. This helps us a lot to pin this down, because some things are not well documented, and some things need to be even looked up in code. And who actually wants to read 6 client implementations to figure out which one is now delivering what metrics exactly? So this is our setup right now. I guess you can say we improved quite a bit in this regards using StereumLabs and our experience going forward with StereumLabs. As you can see, we evolved from 12 distinct client pairs to 21. That's almost 2/3 of the client combinations possible by only adding 3 different clients. And you can see above that that we left out Aragon because it was not a fit for us. I will go into this a little bit deeper later. But for now, no other client in our setup has now over 30%. And even if one client fails, the other ones will take over. So we take great care of having a good measurement of safety with our nodes. So to wrap this up, sorry, not to wrap this up. Speaking of not fixing, there is no best client. Professional operators need a fit to their infrastructure, and it needs to fit in their processes. As I mentioned before, one of the clients didn't fit our how we want to run our setup, so we just left it out. I think that's also something that is worth saying. You don't need to actually run all 36 combinations, but to diversify in a more diverse set, it is important to look at all the different parameters. And for us, it was balancing out is the most important topic. So different client combinations, of course, behave differently, and the balance is all you need to look for. There can be a client, an execution client, that is very, very well with another consensus client, but really, really bad with another consensus client. And it really needs to fit your infrastructure, your processes, and so on. For CSM or solo stakers, the most important thing, as far as we know, is sync time, of course, and disk footprint. This is especially important because prices for disks or SSDs are skyrocketing since a year or so. So getting it low actually helps, because it also drives client diversity, because one of the smallest, leanest execution clients is also one that is a minority execution client. And also here, AI accelerates finding answers. For example, if you're a solo staker and you use AI on the data StereumLabs provides, you can easily ask, I got a 1.6 terabyte SSD, what clients can I actually run? And it will answer your question, and it will also give you version information and how they evolved. So now, to wrap this up, 3 things. So first of all, there is no real performance penalty if you pick fitting client combinations. And as I mentioned earlier, they of course need to fit your processes and your overall setup. Performance of operators are close together, as I mentioned, and we even improved ours by also improving our client diversity in the same time. So the real differences are the operational side. which should not be underestimated, in my opinion, especially for larger operators. With proper planning, although it should be quite easy to tackle increased sync times or larger disks or even smaller disks. If you run right now with one virtual machine image and you already know that one of the new clients will have a smaller one, you can already prepare, for example, a new image with a smaller disk footprint. And of course, monitoring, as mentioned, please take care of the exact metrics and really try to understand what the metric says, because the meaning can differ from client to client. And the third point I want to make is we proved it in production already that StereumLabs helps a lot in terms of client diversity and in our case also performance. It lowers the risk with more clients and yeah, in some cases even improves performance. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stefan. We actually have some questions. I had a question. I was going to ask which client or client combination is the best, but you kind of front ran me with your slide there that there is no one, and it's but the follow-up question was like, how does that, just like looking at all these metrics really carefully and the client combinations as well, like how does that translate to client diversity on the long run? Like, is there, without being obtuse, is there not like a best pair or a best answer that's going to come out of this? Like, could you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so I think looking at the metrics is important because, as I said, some client combinations just don't work well. So if you want to have client diversity and you just pick some random combination, it might be that you actually end up with a not so optimal pair that is performing subpar. The difference in clients needs to fit the operations. As I already mentioned, I think 5 times, behavior in pruning, behavior in peer-to-peer discovery, especially if you run from home as a home staker, for example, and you have only not an internet connection, so you don't have a static IP address or a public IP address, then you want a client that is very good at peer-to-peer discovery. Block building is also something. If you don't want to rely on the math boost, and you say I want to build my own blocks for ideology reasons, it is also important to pick actually a client that can do that very well. There is one client that really sucks at it. There is also a blog post about it. And to be honest, this is also a moving target. It is difficult to pin down right now a best client combinations, as I already laid out. But having this for a longer period of time, maybe this holds for a year, but having this for 3 years, for example, this is really hard. We saw some clients really struggling to hold their promise, and other clients rise in just a couple of months to really good performance.
Yeah, thanks. Good. But no, we do see that with node operators that they have pairs that work fine one quarter, and then the next quarter they start to see just problems or issues that really are erratic or undefined, and they end up switching, and that ends up fixing it, or they reach out to client teams, they help them out, but they really can't pinpoint it. And it sometimes seems that these problems go away, or there are version differences that don't work well together. Yeah, I understand there's lots of issues that arise like as you're ongoing. Were there any cases where like conventional wisdom or things that people just deem to be true turned out wrong, or any other surprising finds that you've managed to uncover with your production data?
Probably the most interesting finding we had pretty early on, to be honest. It was Teco around beginning of 2026. They released a new version with a new database, RocksDB. And they didn't even announce it like in any sense. It was just in a changelog, like very small fine print, you could say. And actually it changed a lot. The performance improved massively. And we also found out that the execution client that you connect to the Teco plays also a pretty significant role in how the RocksDB performs, probably because of timings and latencies. And you can actually see if you look at more versions from Teco after that they improved it further. And usually client teams don't like to announce this very loudly, of course, for the simple reason everybody would look at them with a microscope, right? So they try to keep it down and try to monitor them themselves, how it behaves on mainnet with actual validators on and with actual stress on them. And yeah, that was probably the most interesting find that we had so far, and to me the most puzzling, because it was not even announced much. Again, this is a blog post on our website, so if you're interested, just read a little bit further.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to ask who is that one client that really sucks at local building, but I think would it be okay to say if people want to know the answer to that, we can refer them to your blog?
Yes, of course.
Let's do that. Keep the suspense high. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks for answering the questions. Thanks for the demo. Up next, we have the final section of our agenda. That's Pablo Misirov, Strategy and Operations Lead at Cantina. Pablo is going to present a Web3 SOC. So it's an institutional due diligence standard for DeFi. And he's also going to share the results of the recent Lido assessment. So Pablo, welcome to the call, and take it away, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, stoked to be here. So over the past few months, we've been working with Lido to help them improve their security posture and implement a series of security controls to prove their level of maturity to big institutionals, low risk capital, and also obviously to reduce the amount of security risk that any organization in DeFi is exposed to. So as you can see here on the screen, we can confidently say that the Lido team has done an excellent work and has been very diligent on managing their security and risk posture. So it is definitely very suitable for any kind of low risk capital, institutional capital allocator that is doing due diligence on DeFi protocols. And the first thing that they want to know is how secure is this organization and DeFi protocol that I'm going to be interact with. So this is the TLDR. And to give everyone a bit of context on what are actually the certifications framework and how it works, allow me to start a bit from the very beginning. And essentially what a security certification is, it's the output, it's the proof of doing an audit that goes through a list of evidence and controls that an organization has implemented in order to reduce their security risk. So these certifications are usually issued based on a particular framework. So if you are, for example, in the healthcare business, then you have to comply with certain regulations, and therefore you need to comply with certain controls as specified in the framework of the healthcare industry. If you're doing the same in finance or in DeFi, you have a framework. And essentially the best way to understand what a framework is some sort of blueprint in order to build a secure environment for an organization. And this framework, this blueprint, has a set of controls, and these controls are like specific policies, processes, governance, and governance mechanisms, some safety guards that an organization implements in order to manage risk and also to prove that they are operationally mature. And that's when these controls are implemented, they generate evidence. And then this evidence is reviewed in order to is indeed complying with all the controls that exist in the framework and that these controls actually work. So that is the most important part, because at the end of the day, you want verifiable proof. You don't want just a simple trust me, we are implementing security controls. So the certification is the output of all that verification. And just to give you a very quick runway of how this works at a high level, you first start by defining and scoping the controls. So an organization starts by creating an inventory based on what the controls inside of a framework apply to them. And these have to be rather generic in the sense that they have to apply to security, but nevertheless, if a certain organization is following a business model or technical architecture where they do not require a cloud infrastructure, then they will not have to comply with controls about cloud infrastructure, obviously. So after all these controls have been scoped and you know which ones must be implemented and proved and which ones are not, obviously with a justification of why this is not applicable, then you start with the implementation of such control. And just to give you probably a very brief example to make this more close down to earth, right? You can think of a control like team member lifecycle management. So although it sounds it sounds probably irrelevant, it is probably one of the most important controls because it governs the way that an organization hires and fires people and all that happens in between. So if you're hiring someone and then for reason X or Y, that person is no longer in the organization, there must be a series of steps that must be programmatically followed, such as revoking authorizations, revoking private key access, reducing the amount of private internal information that it has to the organization, and all this has to be documented and executed upon. And this is an example of a simple control. And then the audit is essentially what I just described, like when you have the control and then you have all these steps, and these steps produce data. Obviously, when you go through the process of having someone depart from the company, then there is all these different actions that are taken that the platforms such as, let's say, Google Workspace or any others produce. And this is the evidence that then has to be audited in order to ensure that the control is actually being implemented and being followed correctly. And after that, usually the best way to review the security posture and the maturity of the controls and that everything works as expected is to reassess all this every 12 months. I hope this gave a little bit of context, but also why are these essentially important? We can go into a whole rabbit hole on why this is important, but I'm going to highlight a couple of very important points. And number one, that is always number one, is that it is a way to reduce cybersecurity risk for our organization. The probabilities of an organization to be breached are much higher if they are not implementing security controls as defined by a framework. So that has to be number one for everything. Then number two, it's because whenever you are interacting or engaging with vendors in order to create partnerships or to use different kinds of technologies, these vendors usually ask for evidence that your organization is following the best practices in security. And the only way to prove this is by having gone through this audit process and providing the output so the organization can say, that's great. Now I can trust that you have actually implemented all the needed security controls. So as you could see in the left column, for example, now that we are in the DeFi industry and regulations are picking up, which is actually great as well from a security point of view, then if an organization is interacting with a big exchange, the exchange cannot simply have a partnership with the organization without asking 1,000 or a bazillion questions about security. So it is much better to have already followed this framework, have the evidence ready, and whenever the vendor onboarding process has to be done, then you can provide this information, and it requires less bureaucracy and operational cost for the organization itself. And also, it does provide a trust of signal because if you have a certification that proves that you are doing things security-wise correctly, then it is easier for people to trust you. And when they trust you, then big institutions are more willing to allocate low-risk capital to this organization and to the DeFi protocol because these institutions are very, very highly regulated. They have millions of questions about security, and we have created this Web3 SOC framework in order to ask many of these questions that big institutions require you to answer. So it is not the first framework that exists, right? If you are familiar with SOC 2, ISO, APA, there is a whole ecosystem of frameworks and standards, and that's great. But the problem is that there has never been one for DeFi. So although something very, very standard, such as SOC 2, which it is required pretty much for any kind of interaction with any vendor, like, do you have the SOC 2? That's the first thing that they will ask you. Institutional capital does not wants to go even further. And the problem that we identify early on in 2024, because we do interact with many institutional allocators, is that the questions and the due diligence that they were doing was way outside of the scope of what the SOC 2 or ISO, and ISO is for creating an internal security management system. And these institutions were asking for questions way outside of that, such as how does their smart contract security posture looks like? How are they developing these technologies? Since there's multi-sigs, who is the owner of the multi-sigs? Since this space is highly adversarial, what are all the hedges and insurances that you are taking in order to reduce that cybersecurity risk? Do you have playbooks? Do you have back bounties? Like, do you respond to back bounties? So these are questions that we were receiving, and we had to answer for many of the protocols that we work with. And because it was there was an increasing demand for answering these questions, we created this framework in order to help organizations such as Lido and many others already provide a document that answers all these questions to anyone who's asking. And just to give you a very high level overview of what is this Web3 SOC framework, we have segmented it into 4 different categories, as you can see here, which are weighted differently. So we have the operational and governance category, financial stability, regulatory compliance, and protocol security. And the percentages that you see there in these boxes are how these controls are weighted, because certifications, when you go through a certification process, the output that you receive is either a yes or a no, like, are all the controls implemented or they aren't. But we wanted to go a step further, because in DeFi, in Web3, in blockchain, organizations do really struggle implementing many of these controls, because it is quite a bureaucratic and sometimes a boring process, although it is not less important because of that. So we created it in such a way that it already provides value to organizations as they keep implementing the controls, and they can constantly compare themselves against a maturity tier, which are the 4 little boxes that you see at the bottom of the slide, such as, okay, based on all these controls that you have implemented across these different categories, you would be in the nascent category, and you have a very big gap to fill still, and this is what you need to do. Or you're in emerging or established, or if you're like Lido, then you are enterprise ready, because you have implemented all these controls. And this is also very important, because organizations sometimes, depending of their risk posture and institutional capital, depending on the risk posture, they are more willing to allocate to either enterprise level maturities, or to established or even emerging. So this already gives the organizations a way to prove value and keep on working through it, instead of like having to spend a lot of time with no value being delivered. So for Lido, what we've been doing for Q1, we started at the end of October. And as I mentioned that in the second slide, this is how the process went. So we started with the scoping, where we implemented the statement of applicability. Then Lido has done a great job on constantly being active and engaging with us on how is this control supposed to be implemented, and for all those controls that they already had implemented, what kind of evidence do they have, how to rearrange the policies and processes whenever they have to respond to anything. And then we assess, finalize, and we deliver the report to Lido. And the TLDR is that Lido is indeed enterprise tier. They are following the best practices, security practices, according also to Web3 SOC, on operational governance, financial stability, regulatory compliance, and protocol security. So I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot.
Thanks, Pablo. But I do have questions, actually. Personally, I don't think this is boring, by the way. I think this is really interesting. I did help out a little bit on the node operations side of the audit, so I was a bit involved. I was just filling in the answers mostly, but it was very interesting. One of the questions I had is, like traditional risk management, you can control your suppliers or your vendors to some degree, but in Web3, you're obviously dependent on permissionless systems and like systems out of your control. So how does that change the way Web3 SOC thinks about risk management? Like, which is, I mean, the most obvious question if you're looking at Web3 part of the SOC.
That's an excellent question. And the short, more straightforward answer is that it does not change it much, but it does require that you document that risk very, very carefully and specifically, and provide any additional controls that you could have implemented in order to reduce risk in case something happens security-wise on the counterparty.
Yeah, I think you have a more DeFi background than a QA background, but you've done a number of these audits now. Has anything surprised you about how this industry specifically manages operational risk?
Yes, and I'm gonna be blunt, because
Yes.
I guess it's for everyone's benefit. There is a huge difference between mature organizations such as Lido, the way that they approach the implementation of these security controls, and those organizations that they have never heard of security beyond a smart contract security audit or just a penetration test. As soon as you start asking them about information security policies, everything goes down. Because even when they can write a security policy, they do not know what are the actual rules and statements and steps that must be followed inside the organization in order to ensure that this control is being followed constantly. So what surprised me the most is the fact that we are very early in improving on adapting these kind of frameworks, which are very needed, because when you look at what some organizations are doing, they lack a lot on the governance or infrastructure side of security, although they have probably solved smart contract security in one way or the other, process-wise.
Oh, cool. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we also have a question from YouTube from Googlies. I don't think that's his real name. How does your he's talking about your framework. He says this is not the only framework of its kind for Web3. So how does it compare to others?
So I haven't explored much others. The similar one would be, you're most likely familiar with, is the SEAL certification as well. And we're actually like very good partners with SEAL. I had a call with them a couple of days ago, so stay tuned for what's coming. And from what I've seen, because our certification is not, our framework is not public yet, it will be. We'll see in a couple of weeks. Is that we do really require a high degree of engagement and involvement throughout the whole process, and we are very strict about the evidence. So although the frameworks, the controls could be very similar in some areas, we ask for more. So our framework could be even a bit more, a bit longer to comply with.
Got it.
Hope that answer your question.
Yeah, we'll have to hope it does. I think it did so fine. I have more questions, but I'm gonna have to wrap it up. We got our studio director waving at me that it's that we're out of time, unfortunately. So all that remains is for me to thank you a lot, Pablo. It was a pleasure to host you and to get your insights on this. Really looking forward to other Web3 SOC certifications, and yeah, we'll be following you and your work as well. Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. All right, folks, that's all for today. Please stay with us for just a minute because I want to thank everyone for joining us for the past hour. There's two things I want to ask your attention for. First of all, there's big changes coming to the Lido staking modules, and you can see them on the research forum. So you can check the curated module V2 thread and go through all the changes proposed by contributors there. You can follow the top QR code there. And you can find more information about Lido Web3 SOC certification from Cantina on the blog as well. That's the bottom QR code. And I think we teased you with an answer to the client, the worst client for building locally. And I'll direct you to StereumLabs.com, if I'm not mistaken. So StereumLabs.com, and you can click on the blog and find the answer there. So to our audience, again, please like and share and help spread the word about this call. It would be great to get more viewers on this. This live call will obviously be available as a recording, and we'll share the recap on our socials as well. So stay tuned there. And I'd love to see you all at the next Poolside. Bye, everyone.